Hello and welcome back, my little Halloweenies. Today we are going to be talking about The Invisible Man Returns. Last year I did a whole commentary video on the original Invisible Man by James Whale starring Claude Rains, and I think it's one of the best movies ever made. So, I mean, what good would it do to talk about a sequel, right? A sequel's never going to be as good as the original, especially something as classic as The Invisible Man, right? Wrong. The Invisible Man Returns is easily as good as its predecessor, and it actually has the added bonus of adding a time limit to these events. The Invisible Man Returns is a fantastically underrated film starring Vincent Price as the Invisible Man this time around. Vincent plays Lord Radcliffe, who is convicted of the murder of his brother and is about to hang. Well, they do everything in their power to try to keep him from hanging and being executed for this crime because they're convinced he's innocent. But on the day of his hanging, there's just nothing else for it. And a doctor friend of the main characters, well, he just happens to be named Dr. Griffin. And later on, it's revealed to us that he is the brother of Jack Griffin from the original Invisible Man. When nothing else is to be done, Dr. Griffin goes to Lord Radcliffe in jail, gives him the invisibility serum, and pretty as you please, Vincent Price just walks right out of prison unseen. Now, they acknowledge the continuity from the last film, despite the fact that they changed Jack Griffin's name to John Griffin and Monocaine to Duocaine. Now, I understand that continuity in the Universal Monster films and continuity at this point in time was not the strong suit of sequels because there was no home video. And so sometimes it could be years in between sequels, and at that point most people are not going to have the clear enough memory to remember. So the continuity is a little fast and loose in some places like that. But overall, they keep the important points, that the invisibility potion turns you star-craving mad. So Vincent Price's character only has a few days to prove his own innocence, using his invisibility to help do so, all the while under the threat of constant impending madness. This is less of a horror film, more of a mystery film and a suspense film. This is sort of like if Alfred Hitchcock made The Invisible Man, except the camera work is not as good, which you would expect. The effects in the original Invisible Man were groundbreaking, some of the best effects of the 1930s, and to be honest, I still love them. I think they really hold up. I know you can tell how a lot of them are done, but that's not the measure of a special effect. The measure of a special effect is, does it get the point across, and is it distracting? In this film, they fix so many of the problems that, yeah, these effects hold up pretty much entirely. There's a couple scenes where the matte lines, are a little bit visible, or the matte process causes certain, images to get a double exposure, but overlook that, and you can really appreciate the amount of work that went into pulling off some of these effects. So in the original Invisible Man, we hear Claude Rains talk about how if he goes out in the fog or in the rain, you would be able to see him faintly, like a bubble, because he's solid even though he's invisible. Well, we never got to see that, and presumably it was because at that point in time, the effects just, they were pioneering effects for that movie. They just didn't get that far. However, in this movie, they actually go around with fog machines, spraying up the rooms to make sure he's visible. I particularly love the detective character, the main detective who is looking for the Invisible Man. He smokes cigars all the time, and he's always offering people cigars. And it is kind of a quirky little character moment, whenever he meets a person, here, please smoke a cigar with me. But then you realize what he's doing is constantly trying to fill the room with smoke. He blows his smoke in a different direction every time he blows it to make sure the Invisible Man's not standing nearby. And at one point, in a positively amazing special effect, he draws in, blows out, and the smoke hits and wraps around the detail of Vincent Price. It is such a good effect, it's kind of mind-boggling. When I first saw it, I had to rewind it over and over again because I was like, there's no way they did that without CGI. It looks like something you would see in the new Invisible Man, or in the Kevin Bacon movie, The Hollow Man. And they do it over and over again. One of my favorites is actually a scene where the cops are walking down the hall, and Vincent Price jumps out, wraps his arm around the guy, and pulls him in. What's amazing about it, though, you only see the shape of him through the fog, but you can see clear details of his arm wrapping around the neck and pulling the guy in. It would have had to have been painstaking. I also really like the fact that they conceal Lord Radcliffe's face. So if you didn't know that it was Vincent Price and you couldn't tell by the voice, you actually might get a little bit of a shock when you see him at the end when he comes back to visibility again. They are actually looking at a file of him, but the paper is just barely covering the picture of his face. So it keeps it kind of a mystery to you until the very last minute. And I like little touches like that. Vincent Price gets the chance to play the Invisible Man as a much more sympathetic and likable character, which is to be expected because when we meet Jack Griffin in the original, he's already on the cusp of sanity. But in this one, we get to kind of go with him on the journey. We already like him, and we don't want him to go crazy and want to take over the world like his predecessor. There's a particularly heartbreaking moment at the end. Again, I won't spoil anything, but he's taking the clothing off of a scarecrow. Vincent Price got across so much in his voice without even needing to see his face. But when he's talking to the scarecrow, it really is a heartbreaking little moment. And of course, the whole time, Dr. Griffin is trying to find a cure, and none of the cures are working. So you get a great moment of suspense about whether or not the cure will work. And at the very end, he's like, I gotta try it. There's a higher chance it'll kill him than that'll save him. But if we don't use this cure, then, we might lose him. And I kind of thought I knew where they were going, that, like, they would just try it and by sheer luck or a stroke of God, it would work at the last minute. But they actually don't do that. They go a completely different route. The Invisible Man coming back to visibility in the first movie is one of my favorite effects ever put to film. But the way they do it in The Invisible Man Returns, they're just using a series of matte paintings, okay? You can tell that it's not real, but it is so artistically, masterfully handled. I really just can't give one thing wrong with it. It's so perfect. And in this version, you get to see the muscles coming across his face, and there's just something really fascinating and beautiful about the work that must have gone into creating this minute or minute and a half of film. So again, I'm not going to say any more about it. You gotta watch the rest for yourself. But I hope I've kind of wet your whistle and got you curious. You should check it out. If you're a fan of the original, I think you'll definitely be a fan of this one. And again, it's only about an hour and 15 minutes. You really can't go wrong. So that's all for today. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.